Along the rocky coast of Maine, where fog rolls in thick from the Atlantic, there are harbor paths the world chooses to forget. Wooden planks creak even when no one walks on them. Lanterns swing in the wind, lighting empty docks. And the smell of salt mixes with something older, something unseen. These paths were once bustling with fishermen, traders, and sailors. Boats came and went with the tides. Voices carried across the water late into the night. But the fog is patient. It remembers every tragedy. Every storm. Every life lost to the cold, dark waters. Locals say the fog carries whispers from the past. That figures appear at the edge of vision, only to vanish when approached. And some who wander too far are never seen again. Tonight, we walk along the most haunted foggy harbor paths in Maine. 20 forgotten piers and coastal paths where the past refuses to stay buried. If you were walking alone along a misty pier at midnight and saw a lantern light swinging ahead, would you continue toward Ida or retreat to solid ground and hope the fog lets you leave? Take a slow breath. The fog is closer than you think. Hello, my dear friend. I am truly grateful you are here with me tonight. Before we begin, settle in. Let your shoulders relax. Allow the rhythm of your breathing to slow. Maine's coastline is famous for its beauty. Jagged rocks. Tidal coves. Fog that blankets the world like a soft, cold shroud. But beneath that beauty lies a history filled with hardship and danger. Fishermen lost at sea. Ships wrecked on hidden shoals. Harbor towns abandoned after storms and tragedy. The paths and piers along these harbors were once alive with movement. Steps echoing across wooden planks. Creaking boats rocking gently. Lantern light reflecting on water. Over time, some harbors were abandoned. Paths fell into disrepair. Wood rotted. And the fog began to hold the memories of those who never returned. Even now, travelers speak of strange occurrences. Footsteps echoing behind them on empty piers. Whispers carried on the wind. Figures appearing in the fog, watching silently. Tonight, I will guide you through 20 of the most haunted foggy harbor paths in Maine. Each one shaped by loss, mystery, and the relentless fog of the Atlantic coast. And before we step onto the first pier, let me ask you something. If you saw a lone lantern glowing at the far end of an abandoned harbor path in thick fog, would you approach to investigate it? Or would you turn and retreat while you still could? Share your answer in the comments, and now, let us begin. Let us begin. Blackwater Cove lies hidden along a jagged stretch of coastline, where cliffs rise sharply from the water and waves crash with relentless force. The cove is narrow, the tide unpredictable, and the rocks below dangerous for any vessel attempting to approach. At the center of this treacherous inlet once stood a pier, long and weathered, built to support trade and fishing. Over time, it became a silent witness to tragedy. The pier was abandoned after a series of shipwrecks. Small boats and larger vessels alike were driven against rocks during sudden storms. Sailors vanished without trace. Some were found days later, stranded on distant shores or carried out to sea. Others disappeared completely, leaving nothing behind but memory and whispered warnings. The structure remains. Even decades after its last official use, the pier extends into the water. Its planks are worn, some broken or missing, nails rusted, and supports weakened by constant tide and wind. Yet it still reaches out over the cove, a skeleton of human effort against nature's might. At night, lanterns appear along the pier. Observers report seeing soft, flickering lights spaced evenly along the planks. They glow with a pale warmth, enough to illuminate the wood beneath them but not so bright as to pierce the surrounding darkness. The lights have no obvious source. No one tends them. They appear only after sunset, their presence brief and unsettling. Figures seem to follow. Shadows rise behind the lanterns, forming vague human shapes. They appear to walk slowly along the pier, keeping pace with the faint glow. Observers describe the movement as deliberate, yet quiet, their feet silent despite the wooden boards beneath them. The figures vanish in fog. A thick mist often settles over Blackwater Cove at night, reducing visibility to a few yards. As the figures move, they sometimes fade into the fog, leaving only the lanterns behind. By the time the mist clears or observers approach, no trace remains of the shapes that were there moments before. The effect is disorienting. Travelers attempting to walk the pier report a sudden sense of presence behind them. Even when the pier seems empty, the air feels heavier, and the sound of the water and wind is muted. Steps are perceived but never confirmed, creating a heightened awareness of movement where there is none. The cove itself is treacherous. Currents shift unpredictably around the pier, and the rocks beneath the surface are jagged and hidden. Boats that linger near the area at night report being nudged slightly, as though guided by unseen hands. Mariners tell of the lanterns appearing just as their vessels draw dangerously close to submerged rocks, and then drifting away when they steer clear. Observers on different nights describe the same sequence. Lanterns appear in the same pattern, figures walk along the pier, fog rises and swallows them, and the sound of water seems oddly subdued. Nothing is permanent. Everything is transient. The pier itself creaks with age. Even without the lights or figures, the wood groans beneath the tide and wind. At times, the creaking seems to synchronize with the appearance of the lanterns, creating a rhythm that is both comforting and unnerving. Visitors often feel watched. The presence of unseen figures combined with the faint glow produces a strong sense of attention. Observers report feeling observed, not threatened, yet deeply aware of an audience that does not exist in the ordinary sense. Animals avoid the area. Seabirds steer clear of the pier at night. Fish remain below the surface near the supports. Even insects are scarce, leaving a strange silence around the cove that enhances the feeling of isolation. No one knows the origin of the lanterns. Some believe they are remnants of those lost at sea, spirits tending the pier in quiet remembrance. Others suggest the lights are a natural phenomenon, perhaps bioluminescence or reflections, but none can account for the steady arrangement or the synchronized movement of the figures. Attempts to document the lights have failed. Cameras and long-exposure equipment sometimes capture faint glows, yet the figures rarely appear on film. When approaching the pier, the lights may shift or disappear entirely, leaving only the empty boards and black water behind. The experience leaves a lasting impression. Visitors describe the interplay of fog, lanterns, and shadow as haunting yet mesmerizing. The pier is both inviting and foreboding. It draws attention, encourages observation, and yet remains untouchable, preserving a sense of mystery that defies rational explanation. The pier stands empty. Planks creak under wind and tide, but lanterns vanish. The figures do not linger. Water moves naturally, rocks are exposed, and the cove appears ordinary once more. Those who witness the phenomenon recall the soft glow, the silent steps, and the fog that swallowed figures whole. The pier endures as a place out of time, a liminal space where light and shadow interact, and the echoes of lost sailors persist in quiet rhythm. Blackwater Cove continues to hold its secrets. Lanterns float along the pier. Figures walk behind them. Fog rises and swallows them. The sailors remain missing. The pier stands abandoned, a monument to the Rivera's danger and the persistence of memory. Warning all who approach that some places carry the past into the present. Quietly guiding and haunting in equal measure. Fog Harbor path stretches along a narrow inlet where water laps quietly against weathered wooden planks. The path is long and thin, flanked on one side by dense reeds and on the other by dark, still water. Mist drifts over the surface, softening edges and reducing visibility, making distance difficult to judge. The boards creak underfoot, responding to every step with subtle groans and pops. At first, it is easy to attribute the sound to age and wear. The planks have been laid long ago, their surfaces worn smooth by countless travelers. Rain, tide, and time have left them uneven, creating the occasional squeak or snap that echoes across the water. Visitors often notice the creaking intensify. It becomes distinct, patterned, deliberate. Walking slowly or standing still produces no new sounds, yet the creaks continue as if someone else is moving along the path, matching the rhythm of their own steps. Sometimes soft singing accompanies the creaking. The voice is low, melodic, and carries across the inlet with surprising clarity. The sound has no visible source. Looking along the path reveals only empty planks and the surrounding reeds. The water reflects gray sky, and no figure is ever seen moving in time with the footsteps or the song. Yet the impression of presence is undeniable, as if someone has walked this route just ahead or beside the visitor. Pausing on the path enhances the effect. The creaks continue, steady and measured, sometimes circling around the visitor as if tracing their position. The singing rises slightly in volume, harmonizing with the rhythm of movement, though no body produces it. Shadows deepen in the mist, and the boundary between water and land feels uncertain. The path feels isolated. Sound from the surrounding forest is minimal. Birds are silent. Insects are muted. Wind moves softly but seems unable to penetrate the mist fully. The inlet and boards appear separate from the normal environment, enclosed within their own quiet domain. Those who attempt to follow the sound find it elusive. Walking faster or slower does not change the distance. The creaking matches pace naturally, keeping close but never intersecting fully. The singing seems to float independently, drifting just ahead or alongside without a fixed location. The effect persists at all times of day. Morning light reveals mist and empty boards. The song is sometimes audible even under clear skies, though less distinct. At night, the atmosphere becomes heavier, the mist denser, and the sounds sharper against the silence of water and reeds. The boards themselves show no sign of recent disturbance. There are no fresh marks beyond normal wear. Leaves, twigs, and debris remain undisturbed. Visitors report heightened awareness. Footsteps feel heavier, each movement more deliberate. Breathing is noticeable. Even when the singing ceases, the sense of being followed or observed remains. Shadows appear more distinct, and peripheral vision captures fleeting shapes that vanish when directly observed. Recording devices capture little. Audio may pick up faint background noise, water lapping or reeds rustling. Local guides offer cautious advice. They describe the path as enchanted or alive, a place where the boundary between human perception and natural sound blurs. They advise visitors to proceed slowly, remain aware of footing, and respect the isolation of the inlet. The singing and creaking are consistent. Returning visitors report similar experiences, step for step and tone for tone. The path maintains its atmosphere, the sounds persist, and the sensation of an unseen companion walking alongside or ahead remains intact over years. Water and mist amplify the effect. Ripples, wind, and fog carry sound further than expected. Singing drifts across the inlet, sometimes reaching the far shoreline where the boards are no longer visible. The path itself feels longer, more narrow, and separated from the land with every step. Visitors leave the path reluctantly. Once beyond the boards, sound fades gradually. Mist thins. Shadows soften. Water resumes ordinary movement. Yet the memory of creeks and song lingers, echoing in thought and sensation. Looking back, the path appears unchanged. Empty boards stretch along the inlet. Reeds sway gently. The mist shifts and disperses. No figure is present. The experience exists entirely in the presence of the visitor. Fog Harbor path endures. The boards remain weathered and intact. The mist returns nightly. The inlet waits silently. Footsteps continue to echo. Singing drifts on the water. Visitors who walk the path carry the memory. Aware that the isle, the mist and the boards are alive. In a quiet, patient way, ready to welcome the next traveler into its endless rhythm. The path to Widow's Point begins at a narrow bay where water meets land in a curve of sand and rock. Small boats often anchor here, though the tide moves unpredictably, pulling at anchors with sudden force. The shore is lined with low driftwood, remnants of past storms, and trees that bend sharply toward the water, shaped by wind and salt. The path itself winds along the shore, climbing gradually to the cliffs above. Those who walk the path speak of its quiet. The bay seems to absorb sound. Waves lap gently against the shore, but voices and footsteps feel muted. The first reports came from fishermen returning late. They described a woman standing at the edge of the pier. Her figure was tall, thin, and still. Her face pale, eyes hollow, fixed toward the horizon. The phenomenon repeated over weeks. Other travelers passing along the bay saw the same figure. Each time, she stood at the pier's end, facing outward, her expression unreadable, her posture unwavering. People described the air around her as stiller than elsewhere, as if the wind softened and the sound of water diminished in her presence. Stepping closer caused the figure to vanish. One moment she was visible, the next only pier and water remained. No footprints marked the dock. No movement was observed, yet the impression of presence lingered, pressing against the observer's awareness. Nighttime brought different effects. At dusk, when shadows lengthened, the figure appeared more frequently. Moonlight reflected on the water and illuminated her form. She did not react to light, wind, or sound. Her gaze remained outward, toward the same horizon each time she was seen. Observers report a sense of compulsion. Some described the feeling that they were meant to follow, to reach the end of the pier, though instinct warned against it. The pull was subtle, psychological, yet undeniable. Those who stepped closer experienced a growing unease, a tension that rose with proximity. Boats passing near the pier experienced minor anomalies. Engines would hesitate or stall briefly without explanation. Rudders felt heavy, water around the hull slowed unusually. Those navigating the bay reported that the effect disappeared as soon as they moved beyond the pier's immediate vicinity. Local legends grew around the figure. Some claimed she was the widow of a mariner lost to the bay long ago. Others suggested she was a guardian, a presence warning of danger in the water. A few told stories of sailors who saw her and never returned to the shore the same way, their memories of the bay altered by an invisible force. Those who spent time observing her reported a shift in perception. Distance and time seemed altered. Sound behaved unpredictably. The lapping of waves softened or intensified without cause. Even light felt different, as though filtered through some unseen medium. The pier, the water, and the woman seemed to exist in a space set slightly apart from the natural world. She does not gesture, speak, or move toward observers. Her presence is passive but undeniable, defined by appearance and absence. When approached, she vanishes. When viewed from afar, she remains still and persistent. She is present only at the pier, never on the path or along the shore. Witnesses describe lasting impressions. The air seems colder near the pier. Shadows stretch unnaturally. Observers report an instinctive reluctance to step onto the dock after encountering her once. Even leaving the bay, the memory of her presence remains vivid, pressing against thoughts and vision. The bay remains largely unchanged. Driftwood continues to scatter along the shoreline. The tide rises and falls as it has for centuries. Trees bend in the wind. And gulls hesitate at the water's edge. Yet the figure persists, returning with dusk and appearing consistently at the pier's end. Approaching the pier requires caution. Those who attempt to step forward feel the psychological pull, the pressure of expectation and unease. Movement toward her triggers disappearance, leaving the observer alone with water and dock. A faint sense of something unreal but tangible. Daylight reduces sightings. In bright sun, the figure is rarely seen. Shadows and reflections offer illusions that do not compare to the clarity of dusk. Widow's Point and the bay remain quiet. The figure waits at the pier, unmoving and observing the horizon. She vanishes upon approach, leaving only the dock, water, and air thick with the memory of presence. Those who encounter her speak of hesitation, curiosity, and the sense that the bay itself holds its own will. The path winds away from the pier. Travelers leave slowly, carrying the memory of a pale woman with hollow eyes. Standing silently at the water's edge, and vanishing as if she was never there. Yet each time the sun sets, she returns, waiting at the pier for anyone who might see her again. Persistent, still, and unreachable. Stormwatch Landing juts into the gray waters of a restless bay, a place where cliffs rise sharply and waves hammer relentlessly against stone. The shoreline is littered with driftwood, scattered rocks, and the remnants of what once were sturdy docks. Broken planks jut at odd angles, nails protruding, swaying slightly with each lapping tide. The wind carries the scent of salt, wet wood, and something older, a lingering sense of history etched into the air. At dusk, the landing transforms. The sea grows louder as waves crash with growing intensity, echoing against cliffs and the remnants of docks. Foam sprays over jagged edges, glinting faintly in the fading light. The sound dominates the senses, a relentless rhythm that fills ears and chest alike. Yet within the chaos, observers sometimes notice another presence, subtle at first, but undeniable. Figures appear among the wreckage. They are tall, indistinct shapes holding lanterns that cast pale light across the water. The glow reflects in the swells, moving with the motion of the tide. It is always sudden, never present long enough for clear inspection, yet always unmistakable. The lanterns illuminate broken planks, ropes, and the occasional rusted metal, highlighting the desolation of Stormwatch Landing. The figures do not approach directly. They stand along the edges of the broken docks, moving carefully and deliberately. They appear to watch the waves, to measure the tide, to mark a presence rather than seek interaction. Observers report a sense of observation, a quiet awareness that feels directed toward them, though the figures do not turn or gesture. No sound announces departure. No footprints mark the wet boards or rocky shore. Only the glow remains for an instant on the waves before fading completely, leaving the landing exposed once more to wind and water. Witnesses describe a profound mixture of awe and unease. The figures carry no aggression, yet their sudden appearances are disorienting. The sea itself seems to respond, waves rising higher, churning more vigorously, as if acknowledging the presence of something unseen. Some say the lantern light seems to draw attention to particular sections of the broken docks, highlighting gaps and jagged planks that could easily be missed in daylight. Stormwatch Landing has a long history of sudden storms. Mariners speak of nights when winds rise without warning, waves hammer the shore, and boats are forced to retreat. Many attribute the strange figures to sailors who perished here long ago, returning in spectral form to warn or observe. Others suggest the lanterns mark paths to safety or caution, appearing only when conditions are most treacherous. The timing of appearances is unpredictable. Even seasoned observers cannot anticipate when the figures will manifest. Calm evenings may produce nothing. Stormy nights can reveal them in multiple locations at once. Their presence is tied to the landing itself, to the sound and motion of the waves, rather than to the observer's position. Visitors often feel the weight of isolation. The crashing surf fills every space, leaving no silence. The broken docks creak underfoot. Salt and spray saturate the air. Against this backdrop, the figuresa lanterns seem almost deliberate. A small point of order in the chaotic environment, a reminder that the landing is not entirely abandoned. Attempts to document the phenomenon have met with limited success. Cameras often fail to capture the figures clearly. Light sensors record sudden spikes, but the images are blurry, distorted, or appear as vague reflections on water. Audio equipment registers nothing beyond the roar of surf, leaving much to subjective experience. Still, multiple independent accounts corroborate the sighting pattern, creating a consistent narrative across decades. Those who linger too long report subtle physical sensations. A chill runs through the body, unconnected to wind or water temperature. Muscles tense and relax repeatedly, as if the observer is being held in place by unseen attention. Heartbeats feel louder against the drum of waves. Some describe a light pressure in the chest, a sensation of being acknowledged without direct interaction. The landing is hazardous in both physical and psychological ways. Sharp planks, jagged rocks, and hidden currents pose tangible risk. Simultaneously, the recurring visions of lantern-bearing figures create a mental challenge. Drawing attention to the movement of water, the broken structures, and the passage of time in a heightened state of awareness. Local lore emphasizes respect. Stories warn that Stormwatch Landing should be approached carefully and without arrogance. The figures are not malevolent, but they are not playful. They are watchful, and visitors who ignore the Landinga's history or attempt to interfere with the remnants of docks often report heightened unease, stronger impressions of presence, and lingering aftereffects once they leave. At night, the landing becomes almost theatrical. The interplay of crashing waves, darkened sky, and occasional lantern glow produces an eerie tableau. Figures move silently, guiding attention, observing tides, and maintaining presence without motion beyond their lanterns. The experience is transient but deeply memorable, leaving observers aware of the Landinga's history and the enduring mystery embedded in its broken docks. Stormwatch Landing continues to captivate. Boats still approach cautiously, travelers pause to watch the surf, and lantern sightings persist. Despite decades of observation. The phenomenon does not harm, yet it commands attention. It reminds those who witness it that some places are alive with memory, with the weight of history, and with forms that exist just beyond the reach of explanation. The figures remain a quiet testament. Standing among broken wood and crashing surf, they are present yet untouchable. Their glow is fleeting, their purpose unclear. Yet in each appearance, they assert the enduring presence of the landing, connecting past and present through light, movement, and the restless energy of water. At Stormwatch Landing, the boundary between reality and memory is fragile. Lanterns reflect on waves. Figures appear and vanish. Waves crash, docks groan. Observers are left with a lasting impression of a place where history, mystery, and the restless sea converge. That can only be sensed, never fully explained. Deadman's Pier juts into a wide estuary, built long ago over the shifting tide flats that stretch for miles along the coastline. Locals tell stories of the path at Deadman's Pier. They say that shadows move along the planks at night, crawling and stretching as if alive. The shapes appear faint at first, barely darker than the wet wood, but they are unmistakably deliberate in motion. Those who attempt to follow or touch them report the shapes vanishing into the fog before contact is possible. The pier feels different after sunset. Fog often rolls in from the estuary, thick and low, clinging to the planks and pilings. Light from nearby towns or passing vessels is muted, scattered by the mist. Visibility drops to a few meters, leaving the path ahead uncertain and the water below obscured. Observers describe dark forms crawling along the pier, moving slowly toward the end or along the sides. They shift without sound, their motion independent of wind or movement of boats. Even when multiple people are present, the shadows seem aware, avoiding physical contact while maintaining their course along the pier. The experience is unsettling. Air becomes heavy, carrying the smell of damp wood and brine. Footsteps echo unnaturally on the planks, yet no one else is present. The sense of being watched grows with each step toward the end of the pier. Those who linger report a pressure on the chest, a subtle tug as if the tide flats below are reaching upward. The shadows disappear without warning. Approaching too closely causes them to vanish into the fog. They do not retreat or flee, but dissolve, leaving only the dark, wet wood beneath. Their presence is fleeting yet undeniable, marked by the memory of movement where nothing tangible remains. The tide flats below the pier add to the sense of danger. At high tide, water laps at the pilings and wet sand covers much of the mud. At low tide, channels and pools appear, creating a maze of slippery surfaces. Anyone who falls risks sinking into the mud, yet the shadows move with confidence over the planks, never faltering or misstepping. The phenomenon repeats regularly. Those who visit multiple nights describe the same patterns. Shadows crawl in similar areas, often near broken planks or leaning pilings. The fog forms in predictable patches, settling in low spots and isolating the path from the surrounding flats. Boaters report unusual currents near the pier. Water appears to shift subtly, pushing lightly against vessels as though guiding them toward the pier or around the mudflats. The pier itself shows signs of long use and abandonment. Visitors are advised caution. Fog can thicken quickly, obscuring planks and edges. Shadows can distract or disorient, and the tide flats below are unforgiving. The shadows do not behave aggressively. The pier is a boundary between water and land. It is both a path and a threshold, a space where the flats meet the river and where the ordinary world intersects with something less explainable. The shadows appear most often near the end of the pier or along sections that rise above deeper channels, as though drawn to specific points. Even during the day, the pier carries a sense of weight. Sunlight does not reveal the shadows, but the wood, the pilings, and the mudflats carry memory. Visitors report a subtle tension in the air, a sense that the place is aware and has long witnessed the comings and goings of those who cross it. Animals avoid the pier at night. Birds do not roost on low rails, and small mammals stay on the periphery. Even insects are quieter along the path, leaving an eerie stillness that heightens awareness of the shadows. Those who observe the pier repeatedly notice patterns. The fog rises and falls with the tide, shadows appear and vanish predictably, and the Rivera's currents shift with intent. The path at Deadman's Pier continues to draw visitors. Lanterns carried along the planks cast small pools of light, but the shadows move independently of illumination. The fog curls around them, the mudflats seem to pull gently downward, and the air thickens with presence. By dawn, the pier returns to quiet. Shadows are gone. Fog lifts. The river and flats appear ordinary. The wood glistens with dew. And the tide retreats. Yet memory holds the sensation of movement, weight, and silent observation. Deadman's Pier remains a place where the past and present meet. Shadows crawl along worn planks, disappearing into fog. Visitors feel the pull of unseen forces. And the mudflats hold their secrets. The pier stands as both path and warning. A testament to a place where the ordinary world is subtly influenced by what cannot be seen. And where every step requires awareness, caution, and respect. Misty Point is a narrow stretch of shoreline where fog often rises from the water before dawn. The docks are small and weathered, wood darkened with age and constant exposure to the tides. From a distance, the rowboats tied to the piers appear ordinary, bobbing gently in the calm water. Yet anyone who approaches quickly notices something unusual. The boats move differently here. They rock in short, uneven bursts, as if someone has just climbed in or shifted their weight. The motion is never prolonged but repeated enough to be unsettling. Observers step closer to see who is aboard, and each time the boats remain empty. No sound accompanies the movement, only the creak of rope and wood. The mist obscures details, softening edges and muting sound. Fishermen, hikers, and residents have long told stories of the boats at Misty Point. Some claim the vessels move when no one is present, a lingering memory of past use. Others suggest spirits of travelers who once relied on these piers remain tied to the place, guiding, or observing without interaction. Visitors describe a sense of presence. Standing near the water, they feel a subtle shift in the air. It is not wind, and not pressure, but a distinct awareness, as if attention itself has weight. The movements appear deliberate yet cannot be tied to any visible source. Cameras record the boats tilting, then settling. The docks themselves add to the mystery. They creak underfoot even when empty, sometimes amplifying the effect of the moving boats. Planks bend slightly under minimal weight, as though the pier itself participates in the phenomenon. Observers report that stepping too close can make the rocking more pronounced, but never reveal a passenger. The rhythm of movement is subtle. The effect extends beyond the immediate pier. Observers on nearby paths report seeing the boats sway before reaching the shoreline. The mist carries a sense of activity, shadows, and movement that vanish when approached directly. The longer someone watches, the more difficult it becomes to judge distance and direction. Animals behave unusually. Seagulls avoid the piers at certain times, flying higher or away entirely. Fish do not break the surface near the rocking boats. The wildlife seems to sense a difference in the space, an absence and presence at once. Time and perception shift at Misty Point. Even short visits feel longer. Minutes stretch, and sounds of water, rope, and fog gain prominence. Observers note difficulty in recalling the exact sequence of events, though the movement of the boats remains clear in memory. No one has confirmed a human cause. Boats are secured with ropes and anchors. The docks are inspected regularly. Weather conditions do not account for the movement. There are no currents strong enough to lift and tilt the vessels as observed. Each motion remains unexplained. The phenomenon is consistent at certain hours. Dawn and dusk produce the most frequent sightings. The fog is thickest at these times, creating low light and soft edges. The boats rock just enough to suggest recent use, heightening the sense of anticipation and unease. Visitors feel compelled to observe. Even after witnessing the boats move without occupants, people return to the piers, curious to see it again. The sense of presence is compelling, drawing attention back to the water, the docks, and the mist-shrouded vessels. The boats never drift. Despite rocking, they remain tied in place. Anchors hold steady. No vessel has ever floated away or collided with another. The motion is confined, deliberate, and precise, suggesting control rather than randomness. Misty Point remains largely untouched. The shoreline is narrow, and access is limited. Vegetation grows thick along the edges, creating natural boundaries. The docks are worn but serviceable, preserved more by tradition than by necessity. The area retains a sense of isolation that magnifies the phenomenon. Those who leave the piers report lingering effects. A subtle tension remains, a feeling of being watched, of small movement beyond perception. The memory of the rocking boats persists, and fog or wind elsewhere may recall it unexpectedly. The scene repeats night after night. They can approach and find nothing. They can watch from afar and feel everything. Misty Point endures as a place apart. Boats move without occupants. Water ripples gently. Fog clings to the shore. And those who observe sense that the boundary between reality and memory is thin, fragile, and constantly shifting. The piers remain, and the vessels wait. Rocking as if recently used, tied but alive in motion, a quiet reminder that some places retain the trace of human presence long after the people have gone. Hollow Bay stretches quietly beneath a gray sky, its waters dark and restless even on calm days. The shoreline curves gently, lined with jagged rocks and reeds that sway with each passing breeze. At the center of the bay, a long pier juts into the water, weathered and worn, its boards cracked and splintered from years of storms and neglect. Rusted nails protrude from the supports, and seaweed clings to the submerged beams below, swaying slowly with the tide. The pier was once a hub of activity. Fishermen launched boats here. Families walked along its railings to enjoy the view. Traders unloaded goods. The structure was solid and welcoming, a bridge between land and water. That was before the storm that claimed several lives. One violent night, waves surged higher than expected, battering the pier with a force that tore sections apart and swept those standing on it into the dark waters below. After that night, the pier was abandoned. Visitors today often describe a sense of unease upon arrival. Even in daylight, the air feels heavy. The boards creak underfoot, shifting slightly as though acknowledging each step. The water laps rhythmically against the supports, but there is a quiet beneath the sound, a pause that hints at history. The wind carries the scent of salt and brine, mingled with a faint trace of something older, something left behind. They lean over the edges, silent, gazing into the water. Their forms are unmistakably human, though blurred at the edges, as if partially formed from mist or memory. They remain perfectly still, shoulders slightly slumped, heads bent toward the dark depths below. Their presence is consistent, yet ephemeral, appearing and disappearing without warning. Those who approach notice something unsettling. No matter how close one moves, the figures do not react. They do not turn to acknowledge observers, they do not step back, they do not move aside. The air near them feels charged, a faint pressure that hints at awareness without threat. Their stillness is profound, a quiet that contrasts sharply with the restless movement of the water around them. As the sun sets, casting long shadows across the pier, the figures appear more clearly. Light catches the railings and boards, highlighting weathered textures and the subtle sway of the tide. The water reflects the shapes faintly, doubling their presence in a silent, distorted mirror. Waves break against the supports with greater emphasis, the sound echoing along the pier, yet never disturbing the figures. Observers report a mixture of fascination and fear. The figures evoke curiosity, yet their silence carries weight. Some describe feeling as though the pier is remembering the lives lost there, that each figure is a marker, a memory preserved in form rather than in motion. The sensation is not frightening in the traditional sense, but profoundly unsettling, a reminder of mortality and absence. Boards shift underfoot, groaning as if under strain, yet the structure continues to stand despite decades of exposure. Seaweed and algae coat the submerged supports, while gulls and herons perch on the railings, unbothered by the spectral presence. The combination of decay, wildlife, and apparitions creates a scene both beautiful and haunting. Night brings an added intensity. The figures appear more frequently under dim moonlight. The water becomes a mirror of dark sky, reflecting the shapes along the railing. Movement on the pier is amplified by the quiet, each step sounding louder than it should. Some visitors report hearing faint whispers carried on the wind, though no one is present to speak. The figures remain still, attentive to the water, ignoring those who approach. Attempts to document the phenomenon have had limited success. Cameras often capture only vague shadows or faint distortions. Photographs may reveal outlines along the railings, but never the clarity described by those present. Video recordings frequently fail to replicate the effect, losing the subtle movement of water and light that makes the experience so compelling. Local lore offers insight into the pier's enduring presence. Stories suggest the figures are tied to the storm, that they represent those who were lost or those who tried to save them. Some say they are guardians, keeping watch over the pier to ensure no one forgets the tragedy. Others believe they are echoes, memories replaying at intervals, tied to the structure and water itself rather than to a conscious spirit. Visitors often leave with a lingering impression. Even after walking away, the memory of still forms along the railing persists. The quiet of the pier contrasts sharply with the noise of the outside world. Waves sound different. Colors appear sharper. And the sense of being observed remains for hours or days afterward. Hollow Bay and its pier endure as a place of reflection and caution. The structure is not rebuilt, and the area is rarely used for recreation. Those who venture there are reminded of the power of the water, the fragility of life, and the strange, silent presence of figures who lean over the railings, staring at the depths, and never move, even when approached. At Hollow Bay, the pier is more than wood and nails. It is memory made manifest, a place where history and the present coexist. The waves crash endlessly, the figures watch silently. And those who arrive are reminded that some places retain the weight of past events, preserving them in quiet, unmoving witnesses. Lighthouse Bend path winds tightly along a rocky coastline, its narrow trail bordered by dense shrubs and weathered cliffs. The ground is uneven, composed of sand, stone, and salt-worn soil, and every step demands attention. Waves crash silently against the shore far below, muffled by the thick fog that often settles along the bend. The lighthouse at the end of the path has been dark for decades. Its tower rises tall against gray sky, paint peeling and windows clouded with age. No light shines from the lantern room, and no keeper maintains its structure. The building leans slightly with time, yet its presence dominates the horizon, a silent sentinel over the water. Visitors report hearing the bell ring softly. At first, it is easy to dismiss. The sound is faint, carried by fog and wind, indistinct from distant waves or the occasional ship horn. But it persists. Stepping closer along the path, the ringing becomes clearer, steady and deliberate, echoing against cliffs and rocks as though the bell is calling out across the bend. It resonates in a low, hollow tone, each toll measured and precise. The bell seems to respond to the movement of those on the path, sometimes matching their pace, sometimes falling behind just enough to feel alive. It carries a haunting quality, a reminder of the lighthouse's long history guiding ships safely to shore. There is no visible source. No keeper is present. No rope or mechanism is operating the bell. Yet the sound continues, independent of wind and weather, persisting through moments of stillness and sudden gusts alike. Fog amplifies the experience. When mist drifts in from the water, the sound appears closer. It wraps around the path, bouncing softly off the cliffs and shrubs. The ringing seems to come from all directions at once, creating the impression that the lighthouse itself extends beyond its physical structure, claiming the surrounding air as part of its domain. Visitors describe an unusual awareness. The sound focuses attention sharply. Footsteps feel heavier. The air is colder than expected. Every movement along the path is accompanied by the echo of the bell, as if the environment is conscious of presence and responding accordingly. The trail itself seems to narrow further. Cliffs appear closer. Shrubs press inward. The path bends unpredictably, sometimes straightening suddenly, other times curving sharply with no indication of what lies ahead. The ringing bell guides perception, drawing attention forward while reinforcing the sense of isolation. Stopping does not stop the bell. Pausing to listen, visitors hear each toll continue as if maintaining its own rhythm independent of human action. The echo carries across the bend, reaching even when the listener turns away or looks behind. The sound interacts subtly with the environment. Wind carries faint tones into the trees. Rocks vibrate underfoot in rhythm with the tolls. Water seems to shimmer in response, reflecting the gray sky with a muted glow. The path becomes an immersive experience, blending land, sea, and sound into a single, cohesive presence. Attempts to record the bell often fail. Audio devices capture only vague noise, indistinct from ambient water and wind. Playback lacks the depth and resonance heard in person. The phenomenon exists primarily in direct perception, tied to attention and presence along the path. Local accounts suggest the lighthouse has never fully rested. Stories describe the tower as a sentinel that continues its duty long after abandonment. The bell is said to toll for ships lost in fog, or to mark travelers along the path, warning them to move carefully and stay aware of the bend. Visitors report changes in perception as they approach the lighthouse. Distance becomes difficult to gauge. The path appears longer than expected, cliffs closer than measured. The ringing becomes more insistent, surrounding the body and mind with its steady rhythm. Footsteps seem to synchronize with the echo, and even breathing is influenced by the haunting cadence. The tower itself remains unchanged. Weathered and silent, it offers no explanation for the sound. Its presence is a reminder of history, of guidance, and of vigilance. Moss and peeling paint attest to decades of neglect, yet the bell continues, untethered to physical mechanics. Departure does not immediately end the experience. As visitors descend the path, the ringing fades gradually. Fog dissipates, waves resume normal rhythm, and the cliffs feel less oppressive. The sound lingers in memory, faint and insistent, reminding those who leave that the lighthouse remains attentive even from afar. Looking back, the tower appears stationary and quiet. The path stretches along the bend, unchanging, yet the perception of sound remains imprinted. The bell tolls in memory, carrying the weight of centuries, echoing through fog and wind long after the traveler has gone. Lighthouse Bend path endures. The narrow trail remains between cliffs and inlet, the tower stands weathered and steadfast. And the soft ringing bell continues to guide, warn, and call out to those who walk its winding length. Visitors leave with the awareness that some places hold the presence of duty and memory, persisting quietly even when human hands no longer maintain them. Foggy Knoll path winds between two old harbor villages, stretching over marshland and rocky ground. The boards are weathered, damp from mist that clings to the low hills and twists around the wooden supports. At dawn, the path appears quiet and ordinary, a simple connector between towns that were once bustling with trade and travel. As evening falls, the fog gathers. Mist drifts low over the knoll, curling around posts and boards. Visibility drops to a few meters, softening the shapes of trees and water along the edges. The path becomes a tunnel of gray, the air heavy and damp, carrying the smell of salt and wet wood. Lantern lights appear midway. At first, they are small and faint, visible only as glowing points within the fog. Their light reflects in puddles and on slick boards, creating the impression of a path lit from within. The lights move along the boards. Observers report that the lanterns do not remain in place. They drift gradually toward one village or the other, gliding along the planks with smooth, steady motion. There is no sound, no movement of air accompanying them, yet their progress is perceptible. They do not fade slowly. One moment they illuminate the boards, the next, they are gone, leaving only fog and the dim outline of the path. Travelers describe a subtle pull toward the lights. Walking near them produces a sense of attention, as though the lanterns carry the weight of unseen observers. Steps become more deliberate. Conversation slows. Even the movement of boats in adjacent channels feels muted, the fog absorbing sound and creating isolation. The path itself seems alive. Boards creak underfoot in unexpected places. Wetwood flexes and groans, echoing across the marsh. Posts lean slightly as though bending to watch those who walk between the villages. Shadows lengthen unnaturally in lantern light, stretching into the mist, creating the illusion of additional movement. The phenomenon is consistent. On different nights, different observers report the same sequence of events. Lanterns appear at roughly the same location, move at the same pace, and vanish with shifts in wind. The path retains a rhythm that feels both natural and otherworldly. Animals avoid the boards. Birds do not perch on low posts after dusk. Small mammals remain in the undergrowth, rarely crossing the boards. Even insects seem quieter, leaving a space of unusual stillness along the path. The lanterns do not respond to proximity. Approaching them closely does not alter their course. They continue moving along the planks, indifferent to observers. Attempts to touch or lift them are met with instant disappearance. The lights return only after a period. Locals offer explanations cautiously. Thicker mist isolates sections of the path, allowing the lanterns to appear as if suspended in air. Trees and marsh beyond fade into obscurity, creating the impression that the path is longer than it actually is. And that the lights are guiding travelers along a space beyond ordinary measurement. Some believe the lanterns mark old crossings, the memories of travelers lost or guided in the past. Others suggest they are manifestations of the wind and water interacting with reflective surfaces. Yet no natural explanation accounts for their movement, timing, or disappearance in shifts of wind. The path feels suspended in time. Boards remain constant, unchanged by centuries of use. The fog returns night after night. Lanterns drift as they did long ago, and the villages at either end remain fixed, while travelers experience the path as though it exists in a separate rhythm from the surrounding world. The experience is immersive. Observers report awareness of space and presence heightened by the fog and lanterns. Every sound carries further, and shadows are accentuated. Moments become elongated as the lanterns move slowly toward one village or the other. The environment shifts subtly around the lights. Air feels heavier near them, moisture collects more densely on clothing and hair, and even the river nearby seems quieter, carrying only a faint ripple instead of its usual flow. The lanterns vanish completely with morning. Daylight scatters the fog. The boards appear dry and ordinary. Shadows conform to normal angles. The path resumes its role as a simple connector between villages, yet the memory of light and motion lingers in the minds of those who walked it at night. Observers carry the experience with them. The sensation of floating lanterns, creeping shadows, and weight in the air remains vivid. Stories pass from traveler to traveler, perpetuating caution and fascination. Foggy Knoll Path continues to exist. Lanterns appear. Shadows crawl along the boards. Fog thickens and thins. Observers move slowly, feeling the presence of something older than the villages themselves. The path remains a bridge between two worlds. Light and shadow, movement and stillness, presence and absence all converge along the boards, offering a reminder that some places maintain their own rhythm, and that careful attention is required to witness it without being overwhelmed. Shattered dock path stretches along the edge of a quiet lake, its boards broken in several places and uneven from years of neglect. The wood creaks underfoot, splintering in spots and forcing careful steps. Water laps against the supports, carrying the scent of damp wood and the faint decay of algae and leaves. The dock is fragmented. Some planks are missing entirely. Gaps open to the water below, dark and deep. Others tilt at strange angles, unstable and slick with moss. The path narrows unpredictably, leaving visitors unsure of where to step next. Despite the decay, the dock continues along the shore, an invitation to explore despite its hazards. Visitors often hear splashing. The sound comes from water directly beneath the broken sections, yet no fish or wildlife appear to cause it. Ripples spread across the surface, rising and falling as if something has moved unseen. The splashes are irregular, appearing at intervals, never forming a clear pattern, and always accompanied by a heightened sense of awareness. A cold presence is felt. Those walking the dock report a sudden chill brushing past their legs, as if someone or something has passed close without being seen. The temperature drops subtly, enough to make skin prickle and hair stand on end. The combination of sound and touch creates unease. The sensation is fleeting yet unmistakable, leaving an impression long after it has passed. The creaking boards, the splashes, and the cold presence interact to make the dock feel alive. Each step forward is accompanied by uncertainty. The water beneath seems to shift with intention. The wind carries a damp, heavy chill, amplifying the sensation of being observed. Stopping does not stop the experience. Even when visitors pause, the splashing continues. The water ripples without visible cause. The chill brushes by intermittently, as though following a rhythm independent of movement. Standing still sometimes makes the sensation more intense, a reminder of the dock's unpredictability. Shadows and reflections play tricks on perception. Wood planks tilt and split, casting jagged lines across the water. Reflections shift with movement in the breeze. Shapes appear in peripheral vision, always gone when looked at directly. The fragmented dock amplifies these illusions, creating the impression of figures that move beneath the surface or just out of sight. The dock feels isolated. Noise from the surrounding forest is minimal. Birds are silent. Insects are sparse. The lake reflects a gray sky, still and somber. The combination of visual and auditory cues gives the impression that the dock exists in its own separate world, a place apart from ordinary experience. Walking along the path demands attention. Each step must be deliberate. Misplaced footing risks falling through gaps. The creaking planks respond differently depending on weight and placement. The irregularity of the wood mirrors the unpredictability of the presence that accompanies visitors. Attempts to capture the phenomena fail. Cameras and audio recorders pick up the ambient sound of wind and water. The splashes are sometimes faintly audible, but the sensation of cold brushing the legs is never recorded. The dock's presence is perceptual, experienced directly rather than documented. Local knowledge warns of caution. Those familiar with shattered dock paths speak quietly of the water's response to human presence. They describe subtle chills and splashing that occurs even when alone. Advice is given to move carefully, avoid lingering, and respect the fragile wood. The dock persists regardless of weather. Rain, sun, and seasonal change alter the boards and supports, but the cold presence and the water's subtle movement continue. Minutes may stretch, each step feeling elongated. Sounds of splashing and creaking dominate perception. The cold brushes past in intervals that seem unpredictable yet purposeful. Leaving the dock restores ordinary perception, but the memory lingers, vivid and unnerving. The dock seems aware of presence. Movement along its boards correlates with responses from water and air. Standing near gaps intensifies the sensation. Walking carefully produces less, but the effects never vanish entirely. The path reacts without form, responding in subtle ways that suggest intelligence rather than randomness. Returning visitors report consistency. Every experience aligns with the last. Splashes occur in the same areas relative to gaps. The cold presence passes in similar locations. Shadows shift in the same unpredictable patterns. The dock maintains continuity, independent of individual perception. Shattered dock path remains. Boards tilt and break. Gaps expose the water below. Moss grows and decays. Visitors leave the path changed. Awareness lingers. Every step remembered. The sound of splashing and the feeling of cold become impressions carried away from the dock. The lake returns to stillness, the forest resumes its rhythm. Yet the memory of shattered dock path remains as vivid as the moment of crossing. The dock waits. Fragmented, unstable, and enigmatic, it stretches along the shore, creaking under invisible weight. Water laps and chills brush past. Shadows shift. The path exists between land and lake, between perception and presence. An enduring space where every visitor feels both guided and observed. And where the ordinary rules of movement and sound no longer fully apply. Seafarer's Hollow lies along a narrow stretch of coastline, where cliffs meet the water and waves lap against worn wooden docks. The harbor was once bustling, filled with ships arriving nightly from distant ports. Crews unloaded cargo, sailors called out to one another, and lanterns cast warm light across the water. The sound of ropes creaking under tension, sails snapping, and distant shouts formed a constant rhythm that defined the hollow after dark. Larger ports replaced the small harbor. Ships ceased docking. The docks fell into disrepair, wood warped and boards splintering from weather. The lanterns were extinguished, ropes rotted, and the space once alive with activity grew quiet and still. Yet at night, sounds persist. Visitors report hearing the creak of ropes under load, as if masts swayed and sails caught unseen wind. The noises come from nowhere visible, yet they are unmistakable. Even seasoned sailors acknowledge the familiarity of the sounds, the rhythm of a working harbor replayed without origin. Shouts carry across the water. Distant voices rise and fall, calling commands or exchanging information. No figures appear on the docks. No lights glimmer along the piers. The hollow is empty, yet the auditory experience suggests life. It is detailed enough that those familiar with seafaring recognize accents, timing, and cadence consistent with decades past. On nights when mist rises from the sea, the sounds seem closer, richer, almost tangible. The air feels heavy and damp. Shapes on the horizon appear and vanish with the fog, though no ships are present. The echoes are layered, overlapping, as if multiple crews perform identical tasks simultaneously. Those who approach the docks experience subtle changes. Footsteps feel muted beneath boards. The smell of salt and tar intensifies. Observers describe a sensation of presence. As if unseen hands guide lines, adjust sails, or move crates along the piers. Attempts to record the sounds produce inconsistent results. Microphones capture some of the creaking and distant shouts, though not consistently. Playback occasionally omits layers entirely, creating gaps that are not perceptible to the ear in person. Scientific instruments measure minor vibrations in the dock supports, yet no physical movement is observed. The origin remains untraceable. Some say the harbor retains memory of past activity, a resonance of countless nights of work. The water, wood, and air remember the ships and crews, replaying their presence in echoes. Others claim spirits linger, bound to the harbor, enacting their routines long after vessels have gone. Time feels altered in the hollow. Observers note minutes stretch and compress. Sounds arrive slightly delayed or seem to move independently through space. Awareness sharpens as if perception itself is engaged, focused on reproducing a scene from decades past. Standing still heightens the effect, movement diminishes clarity. The experience is immersive. Those who linger describe full engagement of senses. The smell of salt and tar, the visual suggestion of darkened masts swaying, the feeling of tension in unseen lines, all combine. The hollow becomes less a place and more an environment shaped by memory and presence. The sounds are unmistakable, yet they are not aggressive. The effect is psychological and environmental, creating a strong sense of reality without danger. Awareness is heightened, but no threat accompanies it. The hollow responds to attention. Listening intently enhances the clarity of creaks and shouts. Turning away or moving rapidly diminishes the sounds. The space seems to react, encouraging focus and observation rather than interaction or interference. Night remains the active period. By day, the hollow appears abandoned and silent. Boats do not move. Docks sway only with the wind. Shadows fall normally. The illusion of activity dissolves under sunlight, yet memories of nighttime sounds persist for those who experience them. The docks remain intact. Wood has weathered, rope is frayed, and boards creak under minimal weight. Structural changes are minor, but the space continues to provide the environment necessary for the auditory phenomenon. No modern machinery or boats are present, yet the hollow behaves as though vessels and crews are always returning. Seafarer's hollow endures as a liminal space. It is neither fully empty nor fully occupied. The echoes of labor and routine, the shouts of sailors, the subtle motion of wood and rope, create a continuous presence. Observers feel the harbor as it was, not as it is, engaging with history through sound, air, and perception. Visitors leave altered. Even after departing, the rhythm of creaking ropes, the cadence of distant voices, and the sense of unseen activity linger. The memory is vivid, tactile, and persistent, reminding those who experienced it that the hollow never truly sleeps. At night, the harbor is alive once more. Ships appear in sound and sensation. Crews move and call. Ropes tighten and wood groans under invisible weight. Seafarer's hollow continues to replay its past nightly. A place where memory and environment converge, echoing the presence of men, ships, and labor that will never return. Black Sand Landing lies at the edge of a quiet bay, its shoreline dotted with dark, coarse sand and scattered driftwood. A narrow wooden path stretches from the forest to the water, made of planks worn smooth by years of tide and foot traffic. In daylight, the path is unremarkable, guiding travelers safely across shallow pools and marshy edges. Yet the landing holds a reputation that draws curiosity, whispered in tales of fog and vanished figures. The fog arrives without warning. One moment, visibility is clear, with the forest and water distinct. Moments later, a dense gray mist rolls in, clinging to the ground and water alike. The path seems to disappear beneath the fog, the planks fading until they are almost indistinguishable from the black sand and the dark water surrounding them. Sound is muffled, and the air feels thick, almost tactile, pressing against skin and clothing. Figures appear on the path. At first, they are subtle, glimpsed out of the corner of the eye. Observers notice reflections in the shallow pools along the path. The effect is disorienting. Travelers report feeling pulled forward, as if the figures are guiding them along the path. The fog enhances every sound of the splash of a small wave, the creak of wood, the distant call of a bird, yet the figures remain silent, unaffected by the ambient noise. The reflections often appear before the figures themselves. Observers sometimes notice movement in the water first, a ripple or shimmer indicating presence. When eyes lift to the path, a figure is revealed in exact alignment with its reflection. Looking directly at the figure causes it to vanish, while the reflection lingers briefly, disturbed only by the observer's movement. The plank path feels unstable underfoot. It creaks and shifts subtly with the water beneath, though no current is strong enough to explain the movement. Travelers describe the sensation as walking over something alive, something aware of presence. Despite the instability, the planks are safe if traversed carefully. The threat is not physical, but psychological. Time behaves strangely in the fog. Minutes stretch endlessly. Steps forward feel measured and slow. Observers describe a sense of suspension, where the forest, water, and path exist outside ordinary chronology. Returning to daylight can be disorienting, as if hours have passed when only moments occurred. Night intensifies the experience. Under the muted light of moon or lantern, the fog thickens. Shadows deepen, and reflections in the water become more vivid. Figures are easier to see, yet their disappearance when directly observed becomes more pronounced. The air feels heavier, carrying the scent of wet wood, sand, and brine. Silence dominates, broken only by subtle lapping of water against the planks. Attempts to document the phenomenon are limited in success. Cameras often capture only the fog, the path, and occasional blurred shapes. The reflections are rarely recorded accurately. Video may show ripples or movements, but never the precise alignment of figure and reflection described by observers. The effect appears tied to direct perception and human attention, rather than mechanical recording. Local lore offers explanation. Stories suggest the landing is a threshold, a place between the known and unknown. The figures are thought to be guardians, echoes of travelers who once crossed the path. The reflections are said to be the memory of presence itself, visible only indirectly to those who acknowledge the landinga's history. Visitors who approach cautiously describe similar patterns. Walking slowly, observing without rushing, tends to prolong glimpses of figures and reflections. Those who move hurriedly or attempt to step onto planks without regard for the path often see nothing. The fog seems to close in, swallowing the landing entirely. The landing is dangerous only in its perception. No harm comes from the figures themselves. The risk is losing orientation, becoming disoriented, or becoming unnerved by the unreality of what is seen. Travelers are advised to maintain focus on each step, to respect the fog, and to move with awareness. Morning disperses the fog. Sunlight gradually burns through mist, revealing the black sand and planks clearly once more. Figures vanish completely, leaving only memory and occasional damp footprints in the sand. The path appears ordinary, unchanged by the experience of those who witnessed the phenomena the night before. Black Sand Landing endures as a place of quiet mystery. The fog, the path, the reflections, and the elusive figures continue to exist for those who venture close. It is a location where perception is tested, attention matters, and the boundary between reflection and reality blurs. Observers leave with a sense of having experienced something impossible to capture fully. An encounter defined not by explanation, but by presence, alignment, and the haunting beauty of figures on planks. Mirrored perfectly in water, and vanishing when looked at directly. Deadlight Pier stretches into a quiet inlet, its wooden planks aged and worn by years of saltwater and storms. Old lantern posts line the length of the pier, their supports weathered and rusted, leaning slightly as if bowing to the water. At first glance, the pier appears abandoned and still, a relic of a harbor long since quieted by shifting trade routes and the passage of time. As dusk falls, the pier takes on a different character. The lanterns begin to glow softly, small flames flickering without wind or source. Observers report that the lights do not remain still. They swing gently back and forth, casting moving shadows across the boards below. The motion is slow and deliberate, as if each lantern has a rhythm of its own. Dark shapes appear along the planks, stretching and bending in ways that suggest life without revealing form. They remain close to the lanterns, shifting in tandem with the glow, yet nothing solid can be seen. Visitors report feeling the presence of figures just out of reach, a sense of being watched but not threatened. The pier itself creaks in response to unseen weight. Boards flex slightly underfoot, responding to no visible movement. Windless nights bring groans and low moans from the timber, sounds that seem to echo the motion of the lanterns and the lingering shadows. The air feels thick, carrying the tang of salt and the faintest hint of smoke, as though a fire had once burned along the pier and left its memory behind. Travelers who linger too long describe a sensation of heaviness in their limbs. Steps become deliberate, movement slower. Observers have noted that even on the calmest nights, when the water is still and the air holds no current, the lanterns swing and flicker. Approaching a lantern does not alter its movement. It responds to nothing, yet its motion appears purposeful, guiding attention along the pier. Shadows do not interact directly with visitors. They do not touch or obstruct, but they influence perception. Movement along the pier seems amplified. Boards that appear solid may seem to shift underfoot. Depth and distance feel altered. The shadows linger, watching silently. Dissolving into darkness only when observers leave the pier entirely. The phenomenon repeats consistently. Those who visit multiple nights report the same pattern. Lanterns glow and swing, shadows move beneath them. And the pier creaks and shifts subtly. The effect is strongest after dusk and before midnight, when the inlet is quietest. And fog occasionally rolls in from the water. The fog enhances the atmosphere. When it settles, the glow of the lanterns is diffused, creating a halo of soft light. Shadows elongate and bend, merging with mist to create the impression of figures standing along the pier. Visibility diminishes, and the ordinary structure of the pier transforms into a space that feels both alive and otherworldly. Attempts to document the phenomenon are inconsistent. Cameras may capture the glow, but shadows often fail to appear. Video may distort the swing of the lanterns, and long exposures sometimes record only blurred light. The experience seems to resist full capture, preserving the mystery of Deadlight Pier for those who witness it firsthand. The pier is dangerous yet alluring. The boards are uneven, nails rusted, and sections sag slightly over the water. Shadows distract, and lantern light can draw attention away from hazards. Observers are advised to move carefully, respecting both the structure and the experience it imparts. No human presence is required for the phenomena. The lanterns glow and swing without caretakers. Shadows appear without bodies. The pier functions independently, maintaining its ritual of light and dark each night, repeating patterns observed over decades. Currents near the pilings shift subtly. Waves lap more quietly than expected, reflecting the lantern light in long, moving streaks. Even fish seem absent from the immediate area, leaving the surface still and reflective, adding to the sense of isolation. Visitors leave with lasting impressions. The swing of the lanterns, the movement of shadows, and the soft creaks of the pier linger in memory long after departure. By morning, Deadlight Pier appears ordinary. Lanterns are extinguished. Shadows vanish. Boards appear dry and still. The water laps naturally against the supports. Yet the memory of night and movement remains vivid for those who have witnessed it. Deadlight Pier endures as a place of quiet mystery. Lanterns swing without wind. Shadows linger beneath them. The boards creak in response to unseen weight. The water flows, indifferent. And the pier stands as a bridge between past and present. Visible and unseen, ordinary and inexplicable. Those who walk it at night know its rhythm. They feel the pull of weight and presence. They notice the shadows that do not touch. They follow the gentle swing of lanterns. And they leave with the knowledge that some places carry life in ways that cannot be fully explained. Preserving mystery for all who approach after dark. Those who walk it at night know its rhythm. They feel the pull of weight and presence. They notice the shadows that do not touch. They follow the gentle swing of lanterns. And they leave with the knowledge that some places carry life in ways that cannot be fully explained. Preserving mystery for all who approach after dark. Folklore's Rest sits along a rocky inlet where the water cuts sharply into the shoreline. The path winds tightly around jagged stone, narrow enough that one misstep could send a traveler stumbling into the shallow, churning waves below. Waves crash against rocks, white foam rising and receding with the rhythm of the tide. Boaters report seeing pale figures along the edge. They appear just above the waterline, leaning forward from rocks or low cliffs, motionless and silent. Their presence is startling at first, the contrast of pale skin against the dark stone making them seem almost otherworldly. They do not move toward observers, yet they do not retreat. Their gaze is fixed, staring across the water as though measuring each passing vessel. The figures never speak. No words escape them. No gestures are made. They remain statuesque, yet the impression of awareness is undeniable. Eyes seem to follow boats along the inlet, tracking movement with quiet attention, giving the sense that their presence is deliberate and constant. The path curves sharply along the inlet. Travelers walking it must focus on footing, as loose stone and uneven surfaces demand care. The sharp turns obscure portions of the shoreline, creating sudden glimpses of figures that vanish just as quickly as they appear. The experience is disorienting, blending anticipation with uncertainty. Fog often drifts along the water. Mist rises from the inlet, softening edges and reducing visibility. In these conditions, the figures appear more defined, glowing faintly against the gray backdrop. Shapes seen in clear air become more spectral in fog, adding to the sense that the shoreline itself holds a presence beyond ordinary perception. Boaters describe a sense of being observed. Even when the figures are not visible, the weight of awareness is palpable. Ripples in the water seem to respond to movement on the path or in a boat. Shadows shift along the rocks, and the wind carries faint sounds, almost like breathing, though none can be located. The figures remain stationary. Standing on rocks or leaning over edges, they maintain position regardless of the tide or time of day. Approaching closer does not change their posture. They do not speak, move, or interact directly. Their presence is defined by gaze and stillness, anchoring attention along the inlet. Visitors report a subtle disorientation. Time feels altered near Folklore's Rest. The rhythm of waves, wind, and movement seems slowed or stretched. Travelers walking the path experience heightened awareness of footing, breath, and surroundings. Boaters note that the figures seem to linger at the same point even as water and vessel move past. The rocky inlet amplifies sound. Wave crashes echo against stone, carrying the faintest noises from distant points along the path. Footsteps on the rocks resonate in combination with water, creating a layered sensory experience that feels both natural and uncanny. Attempts to document the figures are inconsistent. Photographs sometimes capture pale shapes, but clarity is rare. Video may show motionless rocks and churning water without the figures visible. Observers report that the presence is more convincing in person, suggesting a perceptual component tied to direct experience. Local stories offer caution. Fishermen and hikers speak quietly of Folklore's Rest, advising care and respect. They recount the pale figures, describe moments of unease, and warn that lingering near the water can make time feel distorted. Legend suggests the figures are guardians, spirits of those lost at sea, or echoes of past travelers who never returned. The path and shoreline create an immersive environment. Sharp curves, jagged rocks, and intermittent fog focus attention along the inlet. Movement of water and wind contributes to perception, enhancing the effect of figures leaning over the edge. Every step, glance, and shift in posture aligns with the natural rhythm of the inlet, drawing observers into a heightened state of awareness. Sunlight interacts with the scene subtly. In clear weather, figures appear paler, contrasting with dark stone. Shadows deepen their impression. In overcast or foggy conditions, they blend into mist, giving the appearance of emerging from the air itself. The inlet, path, and figures act together to create a dynamic visual and sensory experience. Departure gradually restores normal perception. Walking away along the path, the rocks and waves return to ordinary scale. The sense of being watched fades. Figures disappear from sight. Fog lifts slightly, and the shoreline appears static and uninhabited. The experience lingers in memory, vivid in its clarity yet untraceable to physical evidence. Folklore's rest remains enduring. The rocky inlet, narrow path, and jagged cliffs persist through tides, weather, and seasons. Pale figures continue to appear for travelers along the water's edge, maintaining their stillness and silent gaze. Time and attention do not diminish the effect. Visitors leave with a lasting impression. They recall the sharp turns of the path, the sounds of waves and wind, and the silent figures leaning over the water. The memory carries a sense of awareness and presence that endures beyond the inlet. Fog-bound landing juts into a narrow stretch of water, its pier slick with moisture and coated in years of fog and salt. The wood creaks under weight, though often the surface is empty. The air is thick, carrying the scent of brine and the muted rhythm of waves against pilings. At dawn and dusk, the fog clings low, softening edges and distorting distance. Shadows stretch and fade into gray. Visitors notice sound immediately. Footsteps echo along the pier even when no one is present. Each step lands with clarity, the rhythm and weight of human movement perfectly formed. Observers glance behind them, expecting a figure, yet the pier remains empty. Whispers join the footsteps. Soft and fleeting, voices call names in a tone that is neither urgent nor threatening. The effect is subtle at first, almost mistaken for wind or water. Over time, the repetition becomes clear, insistent, and inescapable for anyone standing near the landing. Fog amplifies the experience. Dense mist absorbs ordinary sound while carrying these echoes directly to listeners. The boundary between distance and proximity blurs. Shapes appear briefly through the gray, though fleeting and indistinct. The pier seems to extend endlessly into nothing, heightening the sense of dislocation and isolation. Approaching the sounds changes perception. Moving forward toward the footsteps or whispers does not reveal a source. The sound does not diminish or redirect. In fact, it often intensifies, as if the presence responds to observation rather than location. The echoes follow, layering upon themselves, persistent and precise. Local lore surrounds the landing. Fishermen and travelers speak of the pier as a place that preserves memory. The whispers are said to be voices of those lost at sea or travelers who never returned. Footsteps echo the passage of individuals who once crossed the pier at all hours. The fog carries these memories, replaying them in space and time. Time behaves differently on the pier. Minutes stretch and contract. The repetition of footsteps and names creates a rhythm that feels both immediate and eternal. Observers lose track of how long they stand, aware only of the patterns of sound that continue regardless of movement or attention. The effect is immersive. Those who linger report heightened awareness of every detail. The slick surface beneath their feet, the creak of boards under weight, the cold damp air, all amplify the experience. The mind begins to fill gaps with imagined movement, yet the sounds are real, consistent, and unmistakable. Animals avoid the area. Birds fly higher than usual, avoiding the pier itself. Small mammals stay away from the landing edges. Fish hesitate in shallow water. The landing seems marked, a space recognized even by the natural world as distinct and separate. No physical explanation has been found. The footsteps align with human gait, yet no one is present. The whispers articulate names with clarity, but no mouth forms them. Acoustic studies confirm the sounds are not wind patterns, water resonance, or mechanical echoes. Instruments detect nothing, yet perception is undeniable. The experience is heightened at night. With darkness enveloping the landing, the fog thickens, and the air grows still. Footsteps become more pronounced. Names are repeated more clearly. Observers report a sensation of presence, though invisible, watching, and unrelenting. Even brief attention triggers a response, intensifying the echoes. Prolonged observation affects perception. Standing on the pier for hours can create disorientation. Sound seems to come from multiple directions at once. Footsteps do not follow linear paths, overlapping and weaving. The whispers repeat, calling names once, twice, endlessly, blending with ambient noise. Reality feels suspended between presence and absence. Daylight diminishes the effect. The fog thins. Shadows retreat. Sounds become faint and sporadic. The pier appears normal, damp wood and water reflecting sunlight. Returning visitors report consistent phenomena. Each time the fog rolls in, footsteps and whispers resume. They never vary in pattern or intensity. The landing remains a place apart from ordinary experience, a space where perception and memory intersect with sound. Fog-bound landing continues to be visited. Some come seeking proof, others seeking the experience. They approach cautiously, aware of the invisible presence. The pier remains narrow and slick, the fog persistent, the air heavy with sound that cannot be explained. Night after night, the echoes repeat. Footsteps on empty wood. Whispers calling names softly. Persistent. Endless. The landing holds them as it has for decades, a space where sound and memory linger, shaping perception, and drawing attention to a presence that exists just beyond the reach of sight. Mist Harbor lies shrouded in a perpetual veil of fog. A small inlet where the water meets broken docks and crumbling piers. The air is thick with moisture, carrying the faint scent of salt and decaying wood. Trees bend slightly toward the water, their reflection blurred in the gray mist. The harbor is quiet, yet it holds a presence that draws attention even from a distance. Their paint is peeling, or sometimes left within, sometimes missing entirely. Moss and algae cling to their hulls, giving them a greenish hue that blends with the water. A paddle dips suddenly, breaking the surface, sending small ripples outward. The motion is precise, deliberate, and entirely disconnected from human presence. No figure sits within the boat, no shadow passes over the water. The paddle moves alone, entering and leaving the surface as if someone is rowing invisibly. The effect is subtle at first. A single boat may shift slightly, or a paddle may stir a ripple. Then another boat responds, drifting with a purpose. Observers report a growing awareness that the harbor is alive in a quiet, mysterious way. As though it observes and interacts with them without revealing its source. Sound behaves strangely at Mist Harbor. The dip of a paddle carries farther than it should, echoing faintly across the mist. Boards creak underfoot, though no one walks on them. The wind seems dampened, allowing small noises to resonate, yet larger sounds vanish into the fog. Silence is punctuated by these intermittent, unexplained movements, creating an unsettling rhythm. The fog amplifies the sensation of presence. Shapes appear and disappear, sometimes indistinctly, other times sharply against the gray backdrop. The harbor feels suspended between time and reality, a space where observation and participation are blurred. Night intensifies the phenomenon. Moonlight reflects off the water in narrow streaks, illuminating ripples as paddles move without guidance. The fog thickens, creating an almost infinite horizon of gray. Figures cannot be seen, yet their effect is undeniable. Boats drift closer or farther, currents responding in ways that feel intentional. The harbor becomes a tableau of motion without visible actors, a silent choreography that captivates and unsettles simultaneously. Attempts to document the harbor have been inconclusive. Photographs capture boats in fog, but the subtle movements of paddles rarely appear clearly. Video often records water rippling without cause, but the sense of presence described by observers is impossible to reproduce. Those who experience it report a profound awareness of being watched and engaged, even when no one is physically present. Local lore explains the harbor's mystery. Fishermen and residents speak of the rowboats as echoes of those lost to the waters. Some say spirits guide the boats, maintaining motion to honor their past or to caution the living. Others suggest that the harbor itself possesses a consciousness, reacting to intrusion and attention, animating the boats to reflect its will. Visitors report a mixture of awe and unease. The movement of the boats is mesmerizing. Observers feel drawn closer, compelled to watch, yet cautious of stepping into the water or disturbing the rhythm. There is no hostility, but an undeniable pressure to recognize the harbor's authority, to move with care and awareness. The more time spent at the edge, the more clearly the boats respond to subtle cues. Small gestures, like the placement of a foot on a dock or the sound of breathing, appear to influence the motion of paddles and drift. Ripples adjust, boats shift slightly, and the observer becomes acutely aware of their own impact on the scene. Mist Harbor preserves its mystery. No permanent structures interfere with the phenomenon. Weather erodes docks, boats continue to decay. Yet the movements persist. Paddles dip, boats drift. And fog swirls, ensuring that each visit offers a similar, inexplicable experience. The harbor remains a place where perception and reality intertwine. Where human presence is acknowledged silently. And where the past and present coexist on shifting water. Those who leave the harbor carry lasting impressions. Even after walking back to solid ground, the memory of motion without actor persists. Observers describe heightened awareness of water and fog in other locations, an echo of the harbor's influence. Some dream of boats drifting endlessly, paddles dipping, a silent rhythm continuing across unseen waters. Mist Harbor endures as a place of quiet authority. Abandoned rowboats float, paddles dip, and fog thickens. The harbor observes, interacts, and maintains its presence without explanation. Those who come seeking solitude or adventure are met with motion, silence, and the awareness of being part of a space that lives, watches, and moves without revealing its source. Boats drift, paddles dip, and the fog conceals and reveals in equal measure. Presence is acknowledged, history is preserved, and every visitor leaves with a reminder that some waters carry life and attention that cannot be seen directly, only felt and respected. Stormlight Cove stretches along a rugged coastline where cliffs rise sharply from the churning sea. Decades ago, a hurricane swept through the area, leaving destruction in its wake. The pier that once extended into the cove was shattered, broken planks and splintered pilings scattered across the water. What remained was a skeleton of wood jutting unevenly into the waves, a reminder of the storm's power and the fragility of human effort against nature. At night, the pier takes on a different character. Travelers report lights appearing along the path where boards were lost. Small points of glow float in the darkness, illuminating portions of the pier that no longer exist in daylight. Silhouettes appear alongside the lights, shaping themselves against the shadows of pilings and jagged wood. Observers describe them stacking planks, lifting unseen beams, and moving deliberately as if restoring the pier to its former state. Every action is slow, precise, and silent. By morning, the pier returns to ruin. The lights vanish. The figures disappear. No traces of work remain, only the original broken boards and scattered pilings. The reconstruction exists solely in the night, a fleeting illusion or act of memory made visible under the moonlight. The effect is consistent. Local residents have reported seeing the phenomenon on multiple occasions over the decades. Each time, the sequence is the same. Lights appear along the damaged pier, figures move as if repairing it, and by sunrise, the cove is quiet once more. Fog enhances the experience. When mist rolls in from the sea, the lights appear brighter and the silhouettes more distinct. Boards seem to extend further than they do in daylight. Movement becomes mesmerizing, a rhythm that guides the observer along the wreckage as if it were whole again. The figures do not interact with visitors. They do not speak, respond, or notice those who watch. Their work continues independently of observers. Attempts to approach or touch the shapes result in sudden disappearance, leaving only the soft glow of lanterns or reflected moonlight on splintered wood. The phenomenon carries a sense of presence. Even without direct interaction, there is awareness in the air. The cove feels quieter, the sound of waves muted. Footsteps on the sand are sharper, each creak of the wood amplified. Observers describe a sensation of weight, a subtle pressure in the air. As though the night itself leans over the pier. The lights move independently of wind or tide. Even on calm nights, when the sea is still, the lanterns float and sway. They follow the outlines of the pier, moving around broken pilings and over missing boards, creating the impression of hands guiding them. No breeze is required. No current explains their motion. The pier seems alive in the night. The pier seems alive in the night. Wood creaks without pressure, planks rise slightly as though pushed, and pilings appear straighter or more stable when illuminated by the lights. Observers report a mixture of awe and unease. The illusion of reconstruction is compelling, yet the knowledge that the pier will return to ruin by morning leaves a sense of impermanence. Viewers feel drawn to follow the lights, to observe the figures' work, yet remain aware of the fragility of the moment. Animals avoid the area at night. Seabirds steer clear of the pilings. Fish dive to deeper water. Even insects are scarce near the cove, leaving the air still and the sound of waves more pronounced. The quiet accentuates the movement of light and shadow along the pier. Attempts to capture the phenomenon are inconsistent. Photographs and video sometimes show the lights, yet the figures often remain indistinct. Long exposures may capture faint motion, but the reconstruction is rarely visible in its entirety. Observers note that the experience cannot be fully documented, preserving the mystery of Stormlight Cove for those who witness it in person. The pier's ruins serve as a bridge between past and present. Broken planks and jagged pilings recall the hurricane that destroyed it. The nightly reconstruction connects the observer to memory and history, a ritual performed silently, faithfully, and invisibly. The lights guide attention but not motion. Observers are drawn along the pier, following the glow as it moves across the planks. Shadows follow or precede the lights, suggesting labor and intent. The effect is mesmerizing and haunting, a reminder of human vulnerability and the persistence of memory in the landscape. By sunrise, the cove returns to normal. Lights vanish, shadows disappear, and the pier is once again splintered and broken. Waves lap against pilings, foam gathers along the edges. The scene appears ordinary, yet those who watched know that the night held something impossible. A reconstruction that exists only in fleeting perception. Stormlight Cove endures as a place of quiet mystery. Lanterns glow along the broken pier. Figures move as if repairing what the storm destroyed. Shadows linger beneath the light. The experience repeats night after night, inviting observation, caution, and reflection. The pier remains broken by day, yet alive by night. The cove is a space where memory and perception converge. Where light and shadow create the illusion of restoration. And where the presence of history becomes tangible without leaving any physical trace. Those who witness it leave with the knowledge that some places continue to act long after the storm has passed. And that the past can move quietly through the night. Those who witness it leave with the knowledge that some places continue to act long after the storm has passed, and that the past can move quietly through the night. Shrouded Pier extends over shallow bay flats where water spreads thin and mud glistens under the early morning sun. Visitors often notice a change in the air. The wind carries a damp chill, and the quiet of the shallow flats is unusually still. Sounds from distant waves are muted, swallowed by the mist that frequently drifts over the water. Even in daylight, the pier feels isolated, separated from the shore by a subtle tension in the atmosphere. Then the shouting begins. Voices rise suddenly, echoing across the shallow water. They are loud, urgent, carrying the energy of a crowd, yet when observers look around, no one is visible. The shouts are accompanied by laughter, sharp and clear, the kind of sound that seems both playful and unnerving. The sounds stop abruptly. One moment the air is filled with chaotic noise. The next, silence. No echoes linger. The water is undisturbed. The pier remains empty. Reeds and shallow mud show no movement beyond what the wind produces. Yet the presence of voices is undeniable. The effect repeats unpredictably. Shouts may rise as visitors reach the middle of the pier. Laughter may accompany them while stepping carefully along a weathered board. The sounds come from different directions, sometimes ahead, sometimes behind, sometimes from the water itself. Each time, the momentary clarity is followed by sudden silence. When mist rolls in from the bay, sounds carry differently. Shouts appear closer, as if produced by figures just beyond sight. Laughter drifts across the flats, bending and stretching with the movement of air. Visual perception is limited, making the presence of voices feel more intense and immediate. The pier feels alive. Boards creak and shift underfoot, responding not only to physical weight but seemingly to attention. The shallow flats reflect sound in unexpected ways, creating the impression that the pier and surrounding water are participating in the phenomena. Visitors report physical reactions. A sudden chill passes through the body when the shouting begins. Heartbeats feel louder. Breathing becomes more conscious. Some describe a sense of being watched, as though the pier is observing movement and presence simultaneously. Stopping does not end the experience. Standing still, the sounds may return at random, laughter or shouting emerging from silence without warning. Pausing in the middle of the pier increases tension, amplifying the impression of attention and presence. Attempts to document the sounds rarely succeed. Recorders capture only faint background noise. Playback reduces the vivid, urgent quality of the voices to muted echoes, leaving the experience primarily perceptual. Photographs show the pier empty, the shallow flats calm and still, without hint of the chaos that was perceived in person. The pier's history is obscure. Local stories describe a space that once hosted activity, gatherings, or rituals. But no records explain why voices continue without people. Some suggest the pier retains the memory of those who once occupied it, replaying moments in sound alone. Others believe the shallow flats hold echoes of events long past, preserved in the environment. The sound is selective. Not every visitor hears the shouts. Those who are sensitive to presence, timing, or rhythm seem more likely to experience the phenomenon. The effect is consistent for some, fleeting for others, but always striking in its clarity and suddenness. The combination of water, mist, and structure creates the effect. Shallow flats amplify sound in unpredictable ways. Wind carries tones differently across the pier. Boards creak and shift underfoot, interacting with perception to enhance awareness. The environment is integral, blending physical elements with perceptual phenomena. Even at night, the effect persists. Moonlight glances off shallow water, casting long shadows along the boards. The voices may rise from the darkness, crisp and startling against the stillness. Laughter echoes, abruptly ending, leaving silence that feels heavier than the day. Visitors leave cautiously. Stepping back toward the shore, the sound fades gradually. The mist thins, the shallow water returns to normal reflection. And the pier seems ordinary once more. Yet the memory of voices, shouts, and laughter remains vivid, lingering long after departure. Looking back, the pier appears unchanged. Boards tilt and weather naturally. Water spreads across mud flats as before. No figure is present, no movement is visible. The phenomenon exists entirely in perception, tied to the presence of visitors on the pier. Shrouded pier endures. It stretches over shallow bay flats, broken and weathered, yet alive with the echoes of unseen voices. Shouts rise and vanish. Laughter drifts and disappears. The path curves sharply, guiding travelers along boards that hold memory and presence in equal measure. Those who walk the pier sense its history, its awareness, and its capacity to make silence speak, long after the visitors have gone. Lantern Bay path winds along a narrow stretch of coastline, where the water laps gently against rocks and sand. Trees line the trail, their branches forming a canopy that softens the light of dusk. Moss and reeds cling to the edges of the path, and a gentle breeze carries the scent of salt and damp earth. At night, the trail is quiet, isolated, and shrouded in mist that rises from the water. Lights appear at the edge of the bay. Soft, glowing points hovering just above the water. They shimmer faintly, like lanterns left behind by someone long gone. The lights are visible only at twilight or night, appearing suddenly as observers round bends in the trail. Their glow is warm yet ethereal, hinting at presence without form. Approaching the lights changes perception. Those who walk closer report a sensation on their shoulder, a weight or pressure as if someone stands immediately behind them. Turning quickly reveals nothing. No figure, no shadow, no source. The feeling persists briefly, enough to startle and unsettle, then fades. Yet the memory of contact remains vivid. The lights respond to attention. Observers note that movement toward them does not diminish their glow. Sometimes, the closer a person gets, the brighter the light appears. At other times, it recedes slightly, maintaining a distance as if aware of the approach. The sensation of presence grows stronger when one is still, heightening awareness of the environment and creating a sense of quiet expectation. Fog and mist enhance the effect. Dense fog softens edges, diffuses sound, and blurs perception. The lights seem to float above water, disconnected from any natural support. The sense of being watched intensifies, and the feeling on the shoulder becomes more pronounced. Observers describe a subtle coldness or pressure, accompanied by heightened perception of every sound. The splash of water, the rustle of leaves, the creak of old wood along the path. Attempts to document the lights yield inconsistent results. Cameras and video sometimes capture faint points of illumination, though recordings rarely reflect the clarity perceived by the human eye. The phenomenon resists mechanical observation, leaving only witness accounts. The sensation of touch on the shoulder does not appear on any device. Local lore offers explanations. Stories suggest the lights are remnants of lanterns left by lost travelers, spirits guiding or warning those who approach the bay. Some say the presence is protective, ensuring that the path remains safe while remaining unseen. Others believe the lights are tied to memory, a replay of past events embedded in the environment, repeating nightly for anyone willing to see them. Whether alone or with others, individuals report similar sensations. The lights glow at the edge of the water. Approaching produces the feeling of a hand on the shoulder. Turning reveals nothing. The sequence repeats, as if the bay itself is performing a subtle ritual. Sound and perception are altered. The air feels heavier near the water. Waves seem muffled. Footsteps along the path echo more sharply than usual. Observers report a sense of slowed time, where each moment is drawn out, and attention is fully absorbed by the environment. The lights and presence become the center of awareness, holding attention in a way that ordinary scenery cannot. Psychological effects are common. Observers describe a heightened awareness of balance, posture, and movement. They instinctively adjust their step, preparing for unseen weight or touch. Even after leaving the path, the memory of the lights and shoulder pressure lingers, a subtle reminder of the bay's unique presence. The sensation is brief and harmless, though startling. No physical contact occurs, and no force is applied. The experience is immersive, creating curiosity, tension, and wonder rather than danger. Rather than danger. The sensation is brief and harmless, though startling. The lights appear strongest at twilight. As the sun sets, the glow intensifies. When night fully descends, the effect diminishes, the lights retreating or fading into darkness. The path appears ordinary, and the ethereal presence leaves no trace. Visitors return repeatedly. Some come seeking proof, others hoping to witness the experience again. Each visit yields the same sequence: lights appearing at the water's edge, sensation on the shoulder, absence of a figure, and the faint hum of awareness that lingers beyond sight. Sensation on the shoulder. Absence of a figure. And the faint hum of awareness that lingers beyond sight. Lantern Bay Path remains a place apart. The trail winds along the water, illuminated by unseen lanterns. The air holds subtle pressure. Footsteps echo where no one walks. Whispers of attention linger in the mist. Observers feel presence without form, guided by the lights and the memory of something beyond ordinary perception. At night, the bay glows softly. Lights hover above the water. Shadows move in the fog. A subtle hand presses briefly on the shoulder of anyone who approaches. The effect vanishes when investigated, leaving only water, mist, and memory. Lantern Bay Path endures as a liminal space. It draws attention, shapes perception, and reminds those who visit that some places exist between reality and memory, where presence is felt even when unseen, and light guides observers without revealing its source. Stillwater Harbor lies at the edge of a wide expanse of water, framed by low cliffs and dense reeds. The path that leads to its shore is narrow and winding, overgrown in places, and often obscured by the thickest fog in the region. Even in daylight, visibility is limited. Trees and bushes blend into the gray haze, the edges of the path vanishing as if swallowed by mist. The air is heavy with moisture, carrying the scent of salt, wet earth, and something indefinable that seems to cling to the fog itself. Those who venture along the path notice a profound stillness. Birdsong fades quickly, insects fall silent, and even the rustle of leaves is subdued. The usual sounds of wildlife are absent, leaving a silence so dense it feels almost physical. Each step is amplified in the mind, the sound of boots on wet earth echoing faintly, yet no echo returns from the surrounding fog. The effect is disorienting, compelling the traveler to move slowly, deliberately, as if the air itself were guiding the pace. The fog thickens closer to the harbor. Shapes and outlines blur. The path becomes difficult to follow. Observers describe a feeling of compression, as though the fog presses inward, closing in around them, focusing attention entirely on the shore and the water beyond. Each breath feels heavier, each step more deliberate. Those who linger report a growing pull toward the water. It begins subtly, as an urge to step closer, to see the surface, to follow the mist to its edge. The sensation is not violent or sudden. It is quiet, insistent, and deeply compelling. Standing still seems unnatural. Sitting is considered, then lying down, as though the path itself encourages surrender. The harbor appears deceptively calm. Waves move gently against the reeds, yet the stillness of the fog magnifies every movement. The water reflects the gray haze, making the boundary between air and liquid almost imperceptible. Shadows form along the edges of the water, subtle shifts in light and texture that suggest figures or movement where none exist. Observers describe a sensation of being watched, not by a person, but by the harbor itself. Time loses its usual rhythm. Minutes stretch and compress. Travelers often glance back along the path to gauge how far they have come, only to find it shifted or indistinct. Landmarks appear, then disappear. The mind grows hyper-aware of small details, the lapping of water, the sway of reeds, the change in fog density, yet comprehension remains elusive. Some who reach the water describe a compulsion to step closer. Even experienced hikers and mariners feel a pull. The surface seems to invite attention, reflecting the fog like a mirror for the observer's own presence. Thoughts of retreat fade. Awareness narrows. The harbor dominates perception entirely. Those who step closer report a sensation of weightlessness in the legs, as though the ground beneath is no longer solid, and a sense of inevitability in each movement. Some lingered at the water's edge, drawn forward by the same quiet pull. Boats or search parties sometimes found personal items left behind. Hats, jackets, or footprints ending abruptly in wet sand. No signs of struggle. No evidence of injury. Simply absence. The fog and the harbor remain unchanged, as if the land itself has claimed them quietly, without resistance or explanation. There is no force beyond the natural pull of gravity or tide. No creatures lurk to guide or frighten. The sensation comes from the combination of fog, stillness, and the unique characteristics of the path. Observers often describe the experience as meditative, hypnotic, and ultimately dangerous. Because calm can lull vigilance while compelling movement toward the water. Night amplifies the effect. Moonlight filters weakly through the mist, casting faint silvery patterns on the water. Shapes in the fog seem to shift with every step, though no source is visible. Sounds are further muted. Even the wind seems absent. Observers report an intensification of the urge to approach the water, a focus that overrides other thoughts. Shadows lengthen along the path, though they appear unrelated to anything tangible. Those who retreat describe the experience lingering. After leaving Stillwater Harbor, the sensation of quiet and compulsion continues for hours, sometimes days. Breathing feels slower, footsteps more deliberate, and awareness sharper. The memory of being drawn to the water remains vivid, a reminder of the subtle power of the fog and the path. Attempts to rationalize the phenomenon explain part of it. Psychologists note that dense fog, combined with sensory deprivation and isolation, can produce feelings of disorientation and hypnotic focus. Geographers point to the visual ambiguity of the shoreline and the reflective water as factors. Yet these explanations fail to capture the intensity of the pull described by multiple observers, the consistency of the experience, and the reports of individuals vanishing entirely. Stillwater Harbor remains remote and largely untouched. The path continues to wind through dense fog, leading to water that is both alluring and dangerous. Travelers are advised to approach with caution, respecting the stillness and the influence of the environment. Those who linger too long risk being drawn forward, pulled by something subtle and persistent, leaving behind only footprints and the memory of fog that dominates perception entirely. Leaving behind only footprints and the memory of fog that dominates perception entirely. Fog, silence, and reflection combine to create a space where perception is heightened, focus is narrowed, and the pull toward the harbor is unavoidable. For some, that pull is irresistible. For others, it is a lesson in respect, patience, and caution. The path endures, the fog thickens, and the water waits, quietly shaping the experience of all who venture into its domain. Places shaped by waves, wind, and the unyielding Atlantic fog. Where sailors, fishermen, and travelers vanished. And where the fog carries memories of the past. You have now walked along 20 haunted foggy harbor paths in Maine. These paths may seem calm in daylight. Quiet. Forgotten. But when night falls, the fog awakens. It remembers every step, every whisper, every life lost along the planks. If you ever travel the Maine coast at night, respect the paths. Do not follow lights you cannot explain. And never assume silence means safety. Thank you for spending this eerie journey with me. Slow your breathing. Let the mist fade from your thoughts. And if you see a lantern flickering somewhere tonight, remember. Not every light is meant to guide you home. Until our next journey into the darkness, stay safe.